Hi, and welcome back to the Commission Podcast. My name is Adam, and this episode is all about partnership. Commission and the Advance Initiative are partnering with the hopes of tangibly supporting one another to reach South Asians in London, and for Advance Initiative globally. It's a fantastic initiative, and there's much work to be done. So let's get right into this one. It's a roundtable we recorded at St. Andrew's, Wimbledon, with Santosh Thomas, the vicar there, Rick Raja from All Nations Church, and Ajay Thomas from the Advance Initiative. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Santosh Thomas. I'm the vicar at St. Andrew's, Wimbledon. It's a pleasure to have two friends here as we're recording at St. Andrew's, Wimbledon. Rick Raja from All Nations Church in Barkingside and Ajay Thomas, Executive Director of the Advance Initiative. These two guys are friends, and this week we're coming together to help with the Advance London Conference, which is lots of fun. We'll talk about that in a minute. I realized I did some research for this conversation. Ajay, you normally speak at conferences with John Piper and Matt Chandler and David Platt, so we're glad that you're slumming it with us in London, brother. So good to have you. We're also excited to announce the fact that the Advance Initiative is partnering with Commission in a strategic partnership for the next couple of years, and that's something we would love to explore, what that will mean and how we can get involved in it. But first things first, Ajay, you are Executive Director of this ministry called Advance. What is Advance and why does it exist?
Yeah, it really is a gift to be with you, brothers. I think the world of you. Advance Initiative is an organization that works alongside the church, and our vision is to catalyze South Asians to become a global missional force. So what we dream about is seeing South Asians not only reached, but in turn reaching others in their communities and beyond to the ends of the earth. And so South Asians mobilized to be a global missional force. And in particular, how we see that because of our conviction of even the local church, something that we share in common, is we want to see South Asians, a global movement of gospel-centered, multi-ethnic churches planted by or among South Asians. So that's sort of really our sweet spot, and what we're going after is how can we get South Asians to be involved in planting gospel-centered, multi-ethnic churches.
It's a remarkable story. I've heard a little bit of how that has unfolded in your context in America over the years, but it would be really helpful to hear. Tell us the origin story. How did you come to these particular convictions and this particular sweet spot, as you say?
I was in university, as you call it, college as we call it, but I was in college and I was at this wonderful evangelical church. And I was about to hear my favorite preacher preach. We were singing songs that my heart connected with. And I remember during the singing being unable to sing. And as I think about it, I was just so burdened at the thought that when are other peers of mine, South Asians I grew up with, when are they going to hear the gospel like I'm about to hear it? When are they going to sing and be in services like I'm enjoying right now? And I didn't know it at the time, but I think God was putting the seedling of a burden towards ministry. Over time, I read a white paper by Tim Keller called Why Plant Churches? And I was marvelously persuaded of the place of the local church and church planting in God's global mission. And so putting all of that together, I received a call towards church planting. And so 17 years ago, we set out to plant a church that could reach South Asians without being a South Asian church. I was born and raised in America. I was in multi-ethnic spaces all my life. And so wanted so badly a church that could reach other South Asians but not be an exclusively South Asian church. And in God's kindness, that's what he did. So 17 years later, if you visited our church, you'd find 50% are South Asian, 50% is everybody. And as we were doing that, we realized this same reality that we're experiencing in Philadelphia, New York needs that, and Chicago needs that, and Atlanta needs that, and LA needs that. And so we gathered with some other ministry-minded pastors who shared that same conviction about the local church, about the opportunity among South Asians, and we sort of started Advance. And Advance was our attempt at catalyzing church planting by or among South Asians. We started really with just the U.S. in mind, only for the reason that that's where we were born and raised. You know, when we were thinking about church planting, there are so many networks and so many organizations and so many denominations that could do this infinitely better than we could. You know, I think the world of Commission, there's just networks and organizations in church planting spaces that are better resourced, have better men, just are in every way more equipped. But we felt in the small slice of planting as a South Asian or among South Asians, there we had something unique to offer because we weren't outsiders. We were inside. We were South Asians. And so we had some area of expertise or know-how and commonalities that we could share. And so we felt like, okay, if we're talking about church planting, let's start something if you're talking about church planting among South Asians or as South Asians. And so we started with the US, and in God's kindness, God's opened some doors of opportunity, including here in London, from partnership and expanding what we're doing beyond the States as well.
That's wonderful. Rick, you're a pastor in London, working as a South Asian background believer, working among South Asians. Why are you excited to partner with these guys? Why were you so positive when the idea of an Advanced London initiative was first raised?
Well, I think, firstly, London is, it's a global city and the nations are here and coming, and they have a massive population of people from South Asian backgrounds. I think over 2 million, particularly from Hindu, Muslim, Sikh backgrounds. London is dynamic. There's movement. People are coming. People are going. They're coming from all over, particularly the Indian subcontinent and the least reached places in the 1040 window to study, to work, to settle, to do life. Sometimes long-term, sometimes for short periods. And it's a massive challenge, but a wonderful opportunity as well to be able to reach them with the wonderful news of the gospel. The good news is of Jesus' life, death, resurrection. So they find him. And, particularly as someone who came to faith in London through a church plant, hearing the good news, and then being nurtured, discipled, growing in love, service, and then also training in ministry, thought, yes, I would love to see more and more people reached who are lost from South Asian backgrounds. So I was a Hindu before I became a Christian, but not exclusively South Asians, people from all nationalities and cultures and tribes. And wouldn't it be wonderful to have a church? It's why we're, as we gathered as a core team a few years ago, a church of all nations, because the place we planted was a very diverse area of London. The gap was there were disproportionately less gospel-centered churches, and so a real need, but particularly someone who was on the inside and just understood some of the cultural tensions, the challenges, what it is like living in this city, which can be lonely, can be hard to find your place and belonging and so on. But to start a church and start a church community where people could say, wow, actually, the gospel is for all. And so a real intentionality to reach people in our area of London, but also where they can find a place, find belonging, hear the good news of Jesus, but also as they do that, to then actually go and the people and South Asians can then go and reach others.
It's been wonderful as we've been getting to know each other these last couple of years, seeing how the Lord has laid similar concerns and burdens on each of our hearts in terms of reaching folks from a South Asian background who are probably underrepresented in what we might call gospel-centered churches in our context. What is it that we think this particular partnership of Commission and Advance could do by working together? What do we hope that might look like? From each of you. Sajay, why don't you go first?
Yeah, and you guys can correct me. You brothers would know better, but from what I've heard and a little bit of what I've experienced even here is there are works aimed towards South Asians, wonderful, fruitful, wonderful evangelistic works, but sometimes a little bit disconnected from the local church. And then there are efforts towards church planting, wonderful, fruitful efforts towards church planting, but sometimes a bit disconnected from some of the people who need it most, like South Asians. And so one of the hopes would be in this partnership is bridging those two worlds of here's both a people and a commitment to the local church, and particularly through church planting, that can be married together through something like Advance. And hopefully Advance can serve in that way in partnering with you all in the works that you're already doing of trying to see church planting happening, but happening even by or among South Asians, and to see those two worlds come together I think would be at least one of the hopes that I have from this kind of a partnership.
Rick, in many ways, you're the poster boy of planting Bayer among South Asians. You've got a cross-cultural training program already. Why do we need these American guys coming over here telling us what we need to do?
Well, I think it was exactly that. I think as we were thinking in our area, and particularly with All Nations, it was exactly that. We felt, okay, there's great works, wonderful works where, mission works, evangelistic work is happening amongst South Asians, and then lots of church planting work. But where do the two, if you think of two circles in a Venn diagram, there wasn't an overlap. And so, as Ajay said, it's to try and bridge those two. And I think All Nations is an expression of that. It was something we were trying to do. And just our name, All Nations, our vision is to be a church of all nations, committed to making disciples of all nations. And really the reason we came to that as we thought about it was, we're in a diverse area where the nations are here. We want that reflected in the local church as body, as people, that we are a people from all nations, but we're also not just here to exist for ourselves, but for the good of others. And so be a church that is committed to making disciples of all nations, Jesus' great commission. So for the good of the community, the city, the country, and the world. And yes, we did start the cross-cultural ministry training program. There were lots of good apprenticeship programs in London and across the country, lots of good things that churches were doing. But we thought, wouldn't it be great to have something that's slightly different, sort of cross-cultural in nature and its flavor and color, particularly an opportunity for those from ethnic minority backgrounds, so South Asian backgrounds, to come to be in a church where we're doing this on the sort of pioneering end, where there wasn't really an established work, but ideas, opportunities, potential to get things going. And so we started with our first couple of interns a couple of years ago. Wonderfully, one has stayed and has become a pastor in training, again, continuing to grow, develop, use his gifts locally. And another one, really the aims of the program was not just to be a blessing to our church and our community, but to send out. And we've seen the Lord work in wonderful ways. So our other cross-cultural ministry trainee has now just moved into Tower Hamlets. We were helping her move a couple of weeks ago to work with young life amongst young South Asians to get the gospel to them who are from various backgrounds, from Islam, from Hinduism, from Sikhism. It's just wonderful that God is working. He's doing that. There's another family last year who went into the 1040 window to do mission back in the Indian subcontinent, which was a real joy and a blessing, and just seeing the Lord move. Because one of the things that I'd mentioned that's special about London is that people come, people stay, people go. And so really using that kind of transience and the churn, the opportunity as people come, that they grow in their love for the Lord, are discipled, are trained, and are sent out to be a real blessing. And then when I'd got introduced to Ajay and Binu and the advanced guys, we thought, across the Atlantic, these guys are doing it. And it wasn't even, when I looked on their website and stuff, and just to see it, I thought, okay, what are they about and what do they offer? And when I looked at some of the training, interestingly, the sorts of things we'd brainstormed on what would be good for interns to know to do with them in terms of cross-cultural dynamics, reaching people from other nationalities and nations, pioneering ministries in a church planting context. And I hadn't looked at it or come across it, but they were identical, the sorts of things. And I thought, wow, there are others doing this. How exciting is that? We'd love to have a conversation and actually to partner, to learn, to develop. I'm a young church leader, been in full-time church leadership for less than 5 years. So I've just got heaps to learn, and thought, what a great thing. So it was a marriage made in heaven.
Oh, wonderful. When I first met Ajay and Binu a couple of years ago and heard a little bit of their story coming up. I mean, it basically sounded like they came from exactly the same background as me, the same church tradition as me. I thought these guys are definitely my cousins or something. We just haven't done the checks.
We
yet
haven't talked long enough. We might be, actually.
Must be. I was like, it's got to be, surely. And so this, in many ways, feels something of a family reunion. We're getting to spend time with brothers who we know the Lord has led on a journey that has brought us to very similar, common, precious convictions. And this conference is one way in which we're trying to move the ball forward in this area. We said there's already lots of networks. There's already lots of conferences. So Ajay, tell us, what is the hope for the Advanced London Conference, which is happening this week?
Yeah. And I'll just add a quick word also of saying the feelings are in every way mutual. It's not that you need these American boys in any way, but rather it really truly feels like an honor to connect with you all. You can have organizations that align on certain shared goals, but underneath that are men, people that you meet. And we met Barry Shutter first when we first came here, met you two, met Matthew Dalton, Andy, and so on. And in each of these meetings have found these are the men who embody the kinds of things that not only we believe in, but they carry the ethos of it. They have the culture of it. And so it really has been a huge privilege in working together in that way. As I said, we were just thinking of America, but we did learn, because of globalization, the diaspora has a lot more in common. And so, as you said, what you grew up with here was in every way our shared experience. And so that's what made us think maybe we can work together, this conference being one expression of that. And so in terms of what we're hoping for through this conference, underneath it all is honestly Luke 10, verse 2, which is, the harvest is ripe, the laborers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest that he might raise up more laborers. So our prayer of prayers is that this conference would be a means by which God answers that prayer for more laborers for the harvest. But then in particular, to just envision ordinary people to say, you have a role in this, that if the gospel is going to advance in UK, in London, across the diaspora, into the South Asian world, it can't be because there's going to be 5 or 6 celebrities, superstars who can do it. It's got to be because there's armies of ordinary people who believe the gospel, who have the Spirit, who feel called to do something and advance the gospel in various ways. And so this conference really is that, which is gathering just ordinary South Asians and those who have a heart for South Asians and connecting with them so that we can envision them to say, there's a role for you. 1 out of 4 people in the world are South Asian. We are the most represented people on earth, and yet present among the least represented in the kingdom of God. And so there's massive work to be done, and it can't be done unless ordinary Spirit-filled people get in the game and see that they have a role. And so our hope is the conference serves to that end.
And that's hugely important, because each culture and ethnic group have plausibility structures of what you might do with your life and how you're encouraged and nurtured and what success looks like. I mean, Rick's the one who actually did the dream and became a doctor. Many of us, our parents and grandparents, longed for that for us. Rick, you did it. Well done. But actually at a conference...
And then he left it all.
That's a different story. That's a different podcast. But actually having a space for people to come together and have it laid before them, that giving themselves to the work of the gospel, to planting churches, to reach people who look like them but are not in the kinds of churches that they find themselves now, is a remarkable thing, because I know its commission is seeking to diversify culturally its leadership. In our context, that's a very tough nut to crack, because the truth is, if you look at the pathways and pipelines for leadership, Rick or I might turn up something, we'll be the only person there who's not from a particular background. And you feel that, and therefore the plausibility feels low for lots of people, thinking, it's not really for someone like me because I don't quite fit the mold for whatever reason. So a conference like this that's so intentional about reaching this so clearly underrepresented people group by mobilizing people who do love the Lord, and maybe their current ministries are slightly disconnected from church planting, or church planting disconnected from this particular burden, I think is a really precious thing. From your point of view, Ajay, you've run these conferences in different places. What feels like success? It's only 2 days. It's a pretty packed program, but what would a win feel like at the end of 2 days?
Yeah, brother, I think you said it so well in using the words plausibility structure. Just, even in the States, just highlighting something you mentioned, I read an article that said something like 10% of the Fortune 500 companies' CEOs are now South Asian. You can feel the South Asian influence in business, in tech, in healthcare, in IT. I mean, you can't ignore the influence. And yet when it comes to ministry spaces, you think of showing up to a conference and you think of showing up to a conference and how underrepresented South Asians often are. I'm in a church planting network in the States. Out of some 700 churches or so, there is one Indian American lead planter, and I'm the one.
You're the unicorn.
I'm the unicorn. And I imagine you feel the same thing as you show up to certain gatherings. And so I think the hope, a win at the end of 2 days, would just be people going, there are people on the stage that look just like me, that share my story, that share my upbringing, the same kind of parental expectations, and they're doing it. And just creating, as you mentioned, a plausibility to say, this is not just for someone else. This is for someone just like me. In fact, I remember a friend encouraging me that sometimes when guys like us are on the stage, just the encouragement of someone that looks like you doing the talk or leading is just a huge thing to say, oh, this is for us as well.
Yeah. And not the token like one guy that they needed to do
That's
to
right.
hit the quota for the photos and for the publicity.
That's right.
Bless you. Now, look, it's encouraging. We were really grateful to do this last year. This is our second year. I'm conscious we're working towards what a longer term vision for this partnership might be. And a conference is a great first step. But I would love for us maybe just to dream out loud a little bit. What could it look like beyond a conference? What might a fuller picture of this partnership look like for us working together, Commission, Advance, other partners locally? Rick, do you want to speak into that for a moment?
Yeah, well, I think just moving on from what you were saying, Ajay, I'd say as someone who came from a different background, entering church felt very much like a minority. Okay, I'm the only one. Where are others in this community? And then particularly when I got into church leadership, felt the same thing. So I think the big vision is, and particularly if we're about church planting amongst South Asians and by South Asians, the conference is very much an 2 days of giving people exposure to that, seeing some of that, and then perhaps as stepping stones, having a weekend next year where with a smaller group of people who perhaps are thinking, I would like to know more, explore my calling in this area. Maybe that, the Lord is, I have a heart for church planting amongst the diaspora, amongst South Asians in this city or other cities in the nation or in the world. So that'd be a good, as a sort of short-term thing, practically to do next. But really what we're wanting is, as the months and years go on, to be able to develop a cohort of like-minded people. And they'll be at various stages, some starting out, some progressing. We'd love to see them then planting gospel-centered, multi-ethnic churches in this wonderful city, so that people can, as they hear the gospel, they can come into a community and actually see the gospel lived out and say, actually, yes, I do belong here because there are people, as I look around, like me. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? It's a massive dream, but God is bigger. And if it happens, we can know that He's done it. And because God is great, let's do it and let's have a go, because this is where God has placed us in this time, and He's brought us together. And we've been thinking about these things in our corners of the earth, but He's brought us together. Why not? Let's dream these things aloud and let's go for it, because you have one life and glory is to come. Wouldn't that be great?
Bless you. That's wonderful. And I'm love hearing that. It's a huge dream, what Rick just laid out, and it's an inspiring vision to get people involved. But we know there are specific challenges and barriers that hold people back from even entering into this conversation. From your experience, Ajay, what are some of the things that hold people back from a South Asian background for entering into this ministry space?
Yeah, and those are some of the places where we felt like we have something unique to offer. So, for example, if someone comes to my church and they're not allowed to come back because mom and dad said you can't go. If I went to a fellow American church planter and I explained, hey, we've got this person, they're interested in our church, but their parents won't let them come. My American pastor friends typically ask, are they 13? Are they 14? And then I have to explain, no, they're in their 30s. They're both professional doctors. They have children of their own, but mom and dad said from India, they shouldn't go to this church. That kind of cultural understanding is some of the things that we totally get. When I share that with both of you, for example, I don't have to unpack that in the least because you both know exactly what that's like. You know what family structures are like. You know what community expectations are. You know what it's like to come from a collectivistic culture as opposed to an individualistic culture. And there's so many examples like that, or just even the simple one of, at least in the US, all these immigrants came to the US seeking the Indian dream, which is essentially the American dream, right? Which is get your children to become doctors, lawyers, engineers. And they risked so that their children would never have to risk. They left everything so that their kids could have everything. And so now for the children of those immigrants to turn around and say, I'd like to pursue church planting or I'd like to pursue ministry is the total opposite of everything that they came there for. It's the inverse of the immigrant dream. And so now we've got to overcome that barrier. There's just so many things like that, or even fundraising. You want to start a church, at some point you're going to have to ask somebody for support. If you came to establish yourself and get this high job and this comfortable life, and now your children are turning around and asking for support in an honor shame culture, it's just totally backwards. So there's so many things in this step towards ministry and church planting that are barriers, that are hurdles that I think we can come alongside because we understand. We've been there. You both know it exactly of what it was like to have to communicate to your family. Rick, for you, I'm deciding to follow Jesus, or then I'm deciding to do ministry. I mean, those are conversations you've had, and therefore have an ability to help others who are just starting that journey as well.
Huge. And I think what's helpful is I know you guys have developed a multi-prong strategy to help people, knowing that they'll be coming in different places and need different kinds of help to get along the way. That's what I love listening to you, hearing what the Lord has taught you and shown you in the American context, which is now beginning to be seen elsewhere. Would you talk us through? I know you've got a cool roundabout diagram, which has got 4 different things that you're trying to cultivate. I think it could be a pathway or a dream that could map quite nicely for us. But talk us through what Advance is trying to do to help people in different stages.
Yeah, we actually created that roundabout because we understood one of the beauties of a roundabout is just you enter at various points, you exit at various points. And we realized people's journeys are not all linear and they're not all starting at the same point. And so we thought that's a good visual of saying we want to journey with people, and they might enter at certain points, they might exit at certain points. And so there's lots of wins along the way, while our win of wins would be to journey with someone all the way from exploration all the way to church planting. So we developed something that we called the participant to pioneer pathway. And we've got 4 words that we use, which is expose, explore, equip, empower. Expose is we want to expose people to the gospel opportunity and gospel need as or among South Asians. And so, as you said, conferences are one way in which we're trying to expose people to this opportunity, envision them to say, there's this huge need. I didn't even know, I didn't even realize. And so the conference is one way. Explore is we want to take someone from there to say, I feel something stirring in my heart. I want to serve the Lord. I don't exactly know what that is. And all of us had certain things that helped us explore God's calling on our life. And so we do something called Weekend to Explore, where we gather people together to just discern together what's God's call on your life. And we have found, maybe because of our shared culture, it's 72 hours, but yet 10 people come together and they immediately feel glued together because of some of the things we talked about: shared culture, shared experience, oh, you too kind of sense. And so we've got those Weekend to Explorers to explore calling. From there, we've got Equip, which is our church planting cohort. We want to come alongside local churches in the formation and training of church planters. And so a year-long cohort designed to equip folks to that end. And then finally, Empower, which is we're not a network ourselves or a denomination. And so what we'd love to do is connect them to people and places where they can be empowered to plant. Who's going to be with them as they journey on and assess them and resource them and walk with them 5 years from now. And so those are the 4 words we've built. And what we would love is to say, that's sort of what we've built. It's got various expressions in the US, but if it's useful, what would it look like to build something similar here? And you all will be the ones to lead what expression that could look like. What's the best way for exploration to happen? What's the best way for equipping here to happen? What's the best way for empowering to happen? But I think those ingredients, however, are somewhat transferable to say, maybe these are the things we need to be thinking about if we're going to create a pathway towards planting and pioneers. But what expression that could take in this context, I think local leaders like you will know better than anyone else.
What's great is we're at a stage here where you have got some ingredients that have proven to be fruitful. Praise God for that. But we're exploring what will it look like in this context for it to work with plenty of other training things going on. Is there a particular opportunity and window and moment that we might embrace to seek to reach more people? Rick, how could people get involved? We've heard encouraging things, exciting opportunities. What might it look like for those listening to partner with this work in some way, or even just to find out more?
Yeah, so I think there's 3 immediate ways that come to mind. One of the ways is to go to the website, advanceinitiative.org. You can subscribe to the newsletter, see what's happening and so on. I think practically in terms of, in London, you can come and have a chat with either myself or Santosh, an event, or drop us an email. The commission officers will have the details. And then just third thing, just keep an eye out there. There are things being planned for 2026, which will be released and sent out. And if it's something that you're seriously thinking about, then it will be an opportunity to be able to have those conversations and see how we can develop that, because there is support available out there.
Yes, and I mean, churches will think about their missions budget and what they support. Our church has recently started supporting Advance. I think it's a great thing to consider. How can we reach a group that we're not reaching? So on the Advance website, there's opportunities to give, subscribe to the newsletter to find out more. We hope it will be a personal, relational connection that goes. We've also thought, if part of partnership is praying, giving, going, we'd love to know, how can we pray for Advance in this next season? So Ajay, would you be willing to share a few prayer requests for us?
Yeah, absolutely. A verse we pray all the time is Luke 10, verse 2. We used to set a daily alarm at 10 o'clock at 10:02 a.m. and pray, but just that the harvest is ripe, the labors are few. The Lord told us we should ask. So really to pray that some years from now, what would the global impact be if South Asians were mobilized for mission? If 1 out of 4 is South Asian and they're currently underrepresented, what would be the global impact both in their communities and to the ends of the earth if they became a missional force? So pray that the Lord would raise up laborers among them. Specifically, we'd love for prayer even just for what this could look like in the UK and in London. We're hoping to do a weekend to explore next year. And so that there would be participants for that and local leaders like yourself raised up for that. We also just literally came back from a South Asia exposure trip where we took 14 folks to South Asia. And so many of them have come back really wrestling with what their calling in life is. And so just praying that God would bear fruit from some of those experiences. We've got some significant conferences and opportunities in the US in 26. And so would love for your prayers that the Lord would use all of those things. Psalm 90, verse 17 is another prayer verse of ours, of just that the Lord would have favor on what we're trying to do and establish the work of our hands, and he would exceed our every imagination in this effort.
Wonderful. I wonder if you might pause the podcast briefly now to pray for some of those things. Brothers, it's been a joy to have this conversation. Absolutely honor you for your faithfulness in this work. It's so important and it's hard but worth it, but also love the friendship and the encouragement that there is from talking and partnering together. And we will be praying for one another on both sides of the Atlantic as God continues to lead us. But thanks for this conversation and thanks for your friendship.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it from us on this one. Please do check the links in the show notes to find out more. And please do keep praying as we grow in partnership to reach South Asians in London. And also of note, we've launched something new called the Partners Program. Partners Program is a way we hope for many more people to get involved in church planting in London through praying, giving, and going. It's a way we can all get involved in God's mission here to reach the lost in a number of tangible ways. We'll have a short episode coming out soon that explains it all. But for now, go to commission.org/partners for more information and to sign up for our first partnership evening on November 20th. There we'll hear stories of God's goodness across London, worship and pray together for what God's doing here in this city, and find out more about what being a partner means. But for now, that's it for us. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.